Welcome back to MvM. Today, I am bringing you to the very edges of civilization, to the icy wasteland that is the setting for Uprising, Curse of the Last Emperor from Nemesis games. This is a fully cooperative 4X style game that is going to require you to play through a series of chapters trying to score the most points to beat out your enemies. Now, there are two threats in this game. The first is the evil Chaos. Chaos has slowly taken over the world and pushed society to the very brink of extinction. Now, this game takes place among the last vestiges of civilization, deep into the icy islands. There, the Empire has tried to maintain control with oppression and force. You play as four disparate factions who have come together to overthrow this evil empire. But be careful, if you focus too much on defeating the empire, then chaos will still overtake these worlds. So you're going to have to work together to defeat both of these forces at the same time without letting one of them get out of control. Now, each player is going to take on the role of one of these factions. You're going to get the player board or map for that faction, and you're going to have a variety of choices to make. Now, every one of these factions is completely asymmetric. The units that you're going to be using in the game are different, as are the heroes you're going to be playing as, because every one of these factions comes with a choice. You're going to have a champion card, and this is double-sided to reflect the two different champions you have to choose from. Each one of these champions is different and has different stats and abilities. So you're going to choose one, and you're going to take the deck of feat cards that goes along with this champion and just remove the other deck from the game, as well as the other mini. So there's quite a lot of variability here already at setup, because you could play a different game every time. Now, I've already set up a 4-player game in progress here. You're always going to have the capital in the center, and you're going to place each faction's tiles around it in a particular order. In addition, you're going to have 4 specific ice towers, and then all of these face-down tiles around it that can be explored and flipped. Along the outside edges of the board, you've got the ice wastes. These are very specific areas of the board that can never be built on, and this is where the forces of chaos are going to be kind of coming from. In addition, you're going to see these garrisons that I've set up here in the center of the board. These represent the Imperial forces. You'll start with a number of these garrisons based on how difficult you want the game to be. There's easy, hard, or extreme game modes. In addition, you could actually increase the difficulty even more by shuffling in some advanced cards into the decks, which I am not using here. Now, I do want to say, as you look at these pieces, even though they look pretty close to being final, this is still a Kickstarter prototype. So everything you see in front of you here is subject to change and is not indicative of the final quality. Now, every player is going to start on their tile. You're going to take the chosen hero that you've decided to play, and you're going to place them on your starting tile along with one of your havens. Now, you're going to start with only one, but you're going to have the ability to build 5. Every time you place a haven on a tile on the board, you're actually increasing your ability to produce goods at the end of every round. Now, these havens can be destroyed. What I think is really cool is that these havens can be upgraded over time, as can these garrisons. Now, off to the side, you're going to see the quest area here, which has 3 active quests. You're going to see the item market that you can buy items from, and you're going to see 4 events laid out. Now, these are the 4 chapters you're going to have to play throughout the game. This is also variable. You can play fewer chapters, or you can play harder chapters by using, for example, level 4 cards in every event. But I'm using a 1, 2, 3, and 4. Off to the side, you're going to see the chapter track that's going to talk you through how to play the game. Because this is a 4X style game, there is a lot going on, but the board does a very good job of presenting information. Everything you need to know what to do on your turn is on your player board. Everything you need to know about running the round is on this chapter track. And over here, you have the Empire and Chaos. They have their own standees that can come out on the board, as well as their own cards that can come out. And you're going to be able to see on top of each one of these piles the nearest threat that is probably going to come out soonest. In addition, everyone is going to take 8 AP crystals, which are going to be the actions you can take on your turn, and you're going to start with 5 of each resource: salt, plunder, and food. You're going to be spending these resources to increase your presence on the board and potentially buy item cards. Now, the goal of this game is to score the most victory points, and you'll see that the Empire and Chaos both have their own victory point trackers, as well as each faction. Every round, each faction is going to be earning victory points in different ways. Now, in order to win, each player has to outscore both the Empire and the Chaos. So this is not every man for himself. If you're already way ahead, it doesn't benefit you to just get farther ahead. You need to help out your teammates, help them find ways to score points so that they can get their victory point marker up to join you. Now, the way you're going to score points is different for every faction, and a lot of it involves quests, building havens, and fighting in combat. So let me talk briefly about the actual structure of the round. Now, you're going to see 4 druid cards here that I've seeded the board with. You're going to just choose 4 out of the stack, and every round you're going to reveal one of these druid cards. This is going to give you a special power that is usable throughout that round. This is kind of the help of the druids coming down to you. In addition, you're going to, at the start of every phase, refresh everything in front of you. Now, of course, the first round of the game, you don't really need to do the refresh phase because you've already set up the board ready to go. So the first actual thing you're doing in the round is flipping over the first event card. And this event card is going to give you some flavor text telling you a little bit about what's going on in the world. Now, some of these events are going to hurt you and some are going to help you. This one, for example, Exiles from the South, gives every player an item. So you can just take an item from the market and place it in front of you. Of course, every time there's an empty space in the item, like it says, if empty, draw 1 item to replace it. And each player will go around taking turns drafting that. But there's always going to be something bad that happens on this card. For example, this one has you placing 2 Horde out. So this is where we're going to look over here at the Agents of Chaos, known as the Horde. You're going to be placing 2 of them out. So it gets really bad really quick. So we're going to look at the top Chaos agent here. It's the Bloodworm. So we're going to take the Bloodworm and he's going to come out in play. This particular card says he is threat 4. So I'm going to take a little marker and I'm going to put him at threat level 4, as you can see here. That way we know exactly how strong he is. And that's going to sit out here. And it says he is going to come in the Screaming Sea, which is this area out here. Now, players are going to get to take that standee, and they're going to get to place him in any of these areas. It says not adjacent to a haven. So we're going to look at the Screaming Sea, not adjacent to a haven, and we're going to place it. So we'll place it maybe here. There's definitely some strategy in placing it. If you're not prepared to fight it off, you want to place it as far away from you as possible. If you think you have a good chance of defeating it within 1 move, maybe you want to put it somewhere a little closer. But you'll notice that there are already skeletons and curses out on the board that you have to deal with, so you want to be careful when placing these threats. So we place, for example, the Bloodworm, and this has us placing 2. So I'm going to take another, which is Oda the Fallen, again at threat 4. So we're going to put Oda out as well. And Oda is going to come out in the Fog Grave, which is this area down here. So now we already have 2 Chaos Hordes out on the board already. Now, if you'll see over here, once we've placed these Agents of Chaos, you're going to see that they have an immediate effect. The Bloodworm says, place 1 curse on a hex with no X. You'll notice some of these have X's, so it's going to tell me to put a curse out somewhere without an X. So we're going to have to choose some place that's maybe a little dangerous where we don't want it to go. So immediately we are thrown into this danger because these are very difficult to beat. You're going to see on each one of these cards, and the Empire and Chaos are the same. If you look at their level, it's going to show you all the different dice they're going to roll. Now, these dice have a different number of hits and defense symbols based on the color. And some of these dice are going to be rolled as part of an archery phase and some aren't. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But just know, the more dice you see on these cards, the more dangerous these foes are. To look at what the skeletons and garrisons roll, you just look at your mat right in front of you and it's going to tell you, which I think is very handy. So in addition, you'll place 1 activation token on every Horde and Imperial that's already out. The number of activation tokens on a card tell you how many actions it's going to take on its turn. And yes, you can stack more than one on these. In fact, sometimes you're going to do a game effect that's going to force you to make a decision and put these activation tokens out, making these hordes stronger. Again, you can load them all up onto one and hope you beat it quick, or you can try to spread them out and minimize the number of actions they're going to get to take. Once that's done, you're going to enter the build phase. This is your chance to kind of build up against the enemy. Now, each one of the factions is going to have 2 starting feats in their feat deck, and you're going to start with those 2 in play. In addition, during the build phase, you're going to get to draw 2 feats and decide to keep one of them. So you're going to have these feats in play, and these can augment your abilities in a lot of different ways, from giving you more actions to take to increasing the power of some of your soldiers on the battlefield. Some of these can be used once per round, some of these have a global effect, and all of these feat decks are different based on the champion that you chose to play. Now, additionally, during this phase, you can build units or you can improve your havens. You can add walls and towers to your havens, which is something I think is really cool because you can actually build onto these miniatures. They're meant to be able to hold these wall features that kind of clip on to the top of the havens. In addition, you can build a tower in the center of your haven, and you don't have to build these in any specific order. You can have some that have towers and some that don't. In addition, you can put out units. Every unit has a different cost, again, on your player board. Most of these are going to cost some combination of salt and food, but you'll be able to place these units out on your player board. Now note, there is a limit to the number of units you can have in any one space, but you're going to be able to summon basically as many units as you can afford. Now, when you're looking at units, you're going to notice that each one has a die symbol printed on the standee. This is going to tell you what kind of die it rolls in combat. If it's a white die, it's an archer, and that's going to get to attack kind of in a preemptive strike. So those are always good to see. Again, the more dice you have to roll, the better you're going to do in combat. And then you enter the action phase of the game. And this is where you're going to be able to spend that AP that you gathered at the start. Everyone is going to have 8 action points to spend on all of their actions. Every time you'll spend them, you'll just take one and place it on the board. Most of these are going to end your turn. You'll get to take one action, then it's going to go on to the next player. The exception is to move. You can place an AP and you can move. That doesn't end your turn, so you can always move and do something else. In addition, you can always trade. If you're on the same space with another player, you can trade items back and forth with them. Now, the reasons you're going to want to move is because you're going to want to branch out to explore new tiles. You're going to want to maybe face down these garrisons, try to deal with the curses, deal with the skeletons, and maybe even fight the Empire or Horde standees that are out on the board. So you can make a lot of strategic decisions here, either to spread out or to keep your units together. Now, there's no limit to the number of actions you can take or the number of times you can take an action, but it's going to go around a circle until everyone's passed. So in addition to move, you're also going to have the ability to command your warriors to move out as well. You'll also have the ability to explore tiles, and when you explore a tile that you're on, you're going to flip that tile over, and it's going to give you an effect. For example, this says gain 2 plunder. However, if empty, we immediately place 2 skeletons there. Each player gains 1 basic unit on their haven. So these explorations can help or hurt you. Now we're kind of in trouble. We've got our hero surrounded by skeletons and their armies are off to the side. In addition to moving and manipulating the board, you can start combat with other units. You can come over here to buy items from the market, or you can try to complete a quest. Now, if you look at a quest here, it's going to show you, first of all, what you'll need in order to succeed at this quest. Now, every hero is going to have a different pool of dice to roll, and you're going to see listed on the bottom of their card what they're going to roll. For example, I roll 3 red dice and 1 blue dice, and I would build a dice pool with those dice, and I can augment that with any items or feats that I might decide to play, or even maybe a druid power that gives me a special ability. Now, once you've built your dice pool, you come over and look at the quest, and this is telling me that I need 2 successes to solve this quest. So I need to roll either 4 skulls, 1 shield, 1 lightning bolt, any combination of these 2 things on these dice. Now, if I happen to roll the shield or the lightning bolt, I'm going to also gain a victory point. And of course, after you roll the dice, you can play anything that you'll need to mitigate those dice rolls. So for this example, I have rolled 4 skulls and 1 shield. So I have completed 4 skulls and 1 shield. I would gain 1 victory point for my faction, and I would do the solved area of this quest. Once that's done, you discard that quest. Now, combat works very similar to completing those quests, except you're not given an exact target number. You're actually making an opposed roll against the opponent. So if you come over here and fight, for example, a skeleton, skeletons just get to roll 1 red die apiece. But if I came over here to fight Oda the Fallen, she's rolling 1 black, 2 purple, and 2 red. And you're going to have another player roll for the enemy. If they roll more hits than you roll shields, you're taking damage onto your units. But vice versa, if you roll more hits than they roll shields, you're doing damage back to them. So combat can be rewarding, but it can also be devastating. You can lose all of your units if you don't come into combat prepared. It's not just luck of the die though. Like I've said before, you can mitigate these dice in a variety of ways, from the druid powers to your feats to your items. You need to make sure that you're not going into a fight empty-handed. If you do, you can always leave it up to the luck of the dice, and maybe you'll come out ahead, maybe you won't. Now, combat has a very specific sequence, and they give you a nice player aid that's going to tell you how to resolve that. First of all, you're always going to look at terrain effects. If there are any terrain effects from your particular tile, you'll have to apply those to combat. Then all archers are going to get to roll first. So if your archers do enough damage to wipe out the enemy, then you don't have to suffer any damage back. But if they don't, then you're going to enter a clash, which is like the meat of combat. This is where you're going to be rolling dice back and forth until everyone is destroyed and one side is the victor. Now, this can lead to loss of your units. It can also lead to loss of your havens, which means you're going to get less production during the production phase of the game. Every time the Chaos of the Empire defeats an enemy, they're going to come over here into the graveyard. So you might end up looking at a situation like this, where you have players in the different graveyards. They're going to earn 2 victory points for each unique faction they've killed. So in this situation, they're earning 6 over here and 2 over here. Now, maybe you want to just throw 1 player at a specific faction, because it doesn't matter how many pieces they have, they're still only going to get 2 victory points, no matter how many of that faction are present. Now, you can also defeat garrisons in this way. And garrisons can be leveled up like your havens. They start with a level 1, but they can actually be leveled up. You'll see level 2 versions of garrisons where you'll stack little roofs on top of the garrison. And then you'll have the level 3, which gives you a little pinnacle that's going to sit on top of that as well. So these garrisons are going to increase in strength as the game goes on, meaning you either destroy them when they're small or you just let them grow until maybe they become insurmountable. Now, once each player has passed, they're done moving, building havens, exploring tiles, fighting, or they've just spent all their AP or resources and can't do anything else. Everyone passes, it moves on to the villain phase. Each one of the Empire and Horde standees are going to activate a number of times based on their activation token. And again, you're going to see a handy player aid that's going to tell you what happens when each one of these factions activate, because they do have different rules for activation. In fact, the Legion are going to be placing down these garrisons as they move, and the Horde are going to be placing curses as they move. So these can be quickly overwhelming, and they're going to attack with the dice they have. Now, if you've already attacked them and lost, there's really nothing left to stop them from coming and destroying your haven. So you need to choose between defensive strategies and aggressive strategies. Now, other players can come in and help defend other players' strongholds. So you need to find a good synergy at the table, who's focusing on maybe some defense and who's going on the offense to hunt down these enemies, because you don't want to just let them power up the board, because they're going to eventually just completely overwhelm you. They'll have so many victory points you can't possibly catch up. But that is the balance of the game. Now, once the enemy has finished with all their actions, you're going to gain your production. Now, I mentioned you're going to gain more production based on the number of havens you have out, because you're going to be clearing out the spaces here on your player mat, and you're going to be getting more for that. In addition, you're going to produce from the hexes that your havens are on. So you can end up getting a lot of resources here, because you're going to be wanting to spend a lot for the next turn. So preparing by placing out these havens and protecting them from the enemies is very important. Now, you can get a lot during production if you've planned ahead, or you can gain very little and you'll find yourself in quite a pinch for the next round. Now, you're also going to be giving out victory points during this phase. I already mentioned how the Empire and Chaos are going to score victory points. They're also going to gain points for having figures in play. The Empire is going to get points for the garrisons in play. Chaos is going to get points for the curses in play. So you can't just leave these curses sitting out. However, players are going to score for the havens that they've managed to play and protect. You're also going to score some special abilities. Some of these hexes might just give you victory points. Now, once all that's done, you're going to go back to the refresh phase. You're going to flip back over any feats that you've already used. You're going to flip over a new druid card to be the new druid power for this next turn. You're going to actually wipe the item market and replace it with new items. And you're going to collect all your action points from your board and return them to your pool. So now you're ready to go for the next round. And you're going to repeat that process by replenishing all the quests, revealing a new event card, increasing the threat of the different horde and legions, placing the activation tokens, and you're going to go through that whole process again. You're going to do all of this 4 times. Now at the end of the 4th round, you're still going to do that last scoring phase like normal, and then that's it. You're going to look at the victory points. If Chaos is winning or the Empire is winning, you lose. If every player has beaten these individual markers, then you win. So victory is not easy. It's very easy to get overwhelmed, and I've said this about co-ops, and I'll probably say it every time. I like a co-op when it's hard. I don't think you should be able to beat a co-op the first time you play. However, once you start to learn how to best utilize your actions in this game, you'll start to be defeating these challenges a little easier, and that's when it's time to start either upping the difficulty of your chapters or start adding in some of those advanced cards to make the game even more difficult. So guys, thank you for watching. That is Uprising, Curse of the Last Empire. The game is on Kickstarter right now, so take a look at the Kickstarter page to see what all the final components are going to look like. And as always, thank you guys for watching, liking, and subscribing to us here at MvM, and I will see you next time.
Now, before you go, there's one more thing I want to talk about. I hate to bring this up, but YouTube analytics tells us to do this. So please click on the subscription button, ring the bell, watch our next video, rinse and repeat. Just keep doing that over and over and over and over.